name is Chelsea Burke. I'm an education coordinator here at John Humphrey Centre. And my job, I was one of the leads on the project, and so my job was to help develop the content before we got into the schools, and then I delivered the content in 3 of the schools. It's called Reconciliation in Schools, and so we focused on 8 learning sessions and then 3 to 4 calls to action sessions. We came up with topics that we thought were really important and the bare minimum to talk about reconciliation. And so that included residential schools. So I think that it's really long overdue to learn about these topics in school. And we wanted to add our voice to the movement of reconciliation from a human rights framework and human rights standpoint, and using things such as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the TRC calls to action, and the blanket exercise as educational tools is really important and worked really well with the students.
What do you think about, how do you think the other kids felt about the blanket exercise when we demonstrated it for them?
More in tune.
Yeah?
And more,
The pressure.
I don't know, it felt nice, like, watching the non-Aboriginal students do it, because they now know what happened, like, about Canada and all the things that happen, and all, like, the events and the dates and how it affects the Aboriginal culture.
My name's Megan Vandergiesen, and I'm one of the education programmers for the Reconciliation in Schools project. And I was working in the high school as opposed to kind of the younger ages. I think often just gives you an opportunity to kind of have a better conversation or a deeper dialogue with students. Including art in some way or creative approaches in some way in this reconciliation project has been really important for all students to, and even teachers, to really reflect on what they've been learning and work through some of it, because some of it's very, very dark, and so the art is another way to talk about some of that darkness and some of the feelings that come up for people, and sort of translate it into something or transform it into something beautiful, maybe. That's really the power of art. This blanket right here was made by students at Queen Elizabeth High School, 2 different classes we worked with, and this was an opportunity for them to reflect on the whole project and what stood out to them, what they learned, what they really felt they were taking away, or what was important. And as you can see, a lot of what they included were symbols, traditional sort of teachings, the 7 grandfather teachings. They included, a lot of them wanted to include Cree language and syllabics that they had learned. And there was a lot of focus on culture and respecting diverse cultures. And it was a really beautiful kind of outcome for everybody, I think. And it was also an opportunity for us to partner with an elder in the community and show her, here's what young people are doing and saying about reconciliation, and brought her in to make this beautiful wall hanging.
So our call to action was to examine the First Nation peoples. What I did specifically was the individual effects of residential schools, how damaging they were on a personal level. My favorite speaker was Todd, because he was the easiest to connect with.
Hi, my name is Hinda. I'm a grade 12 student at Queen Elizabeth High School. It really demonstrated the significant amount of land the Aboriginals lost, and it really made me more aware of the pain and loss that the Aboriginal peoples faced.
Hello, my name is Fatima. I'm a grade 12 student at Queen Elizabeth High School. Learning about different worldviews, I learned that Indigenous people believe that land is to be shared and not owned by anyone.
For our call to action, we studied the Indigenous history in Canada. We decided to study the Red River Rebellion.
Our call to action was focusing on Aboriginal history. We focused on the Hudson's Bay Company and the fur trade in general. Our favorite speaker was Todd.
Our call to action is education and representation, and our topic is First People and European settlers, and my favorite speaker was Todd because he walked around and he interacted with us.
My name is Todd Houseman, and I'm an improviser and an actor in Edmonton. I also consider myself somewhat of an activist. I'm an Aboriginal person. I identify as a Cree mixed blood, meaning that I don't identify as Métis, but I do come from mixed heritage. My dad is from Paul First Nations, and I was born in Edmonton, so I consider myself more of an urban Indigenous person. And Treaty 6 takes up a large part of Saskatchewan and Edmonton, or Saskatchewan and Alberta, and sort of spans across the traditional territories of the Plains Cree and the Plains Nakota and some of the Blackfoot bands as well. So being a treaty person means acknowledging that treaty and knowing about that treaty, and even going so far to say as to reading that treaty, I think is a requirement of most treaty people, because that treaty allows non-Indigenous people to live here. Signing that treaty meant, or the reason the treaties were created was so that European settlers could settle this area, not the other way around, which is often what people associate treaties with. They associate treaties with Indigenous people, that Indigenous people are the ones who need treaties so that they can be here. It's the other way around. It's treaties were signed so that non-Indigenous people could live in this area. But what the treaties gave Indigenous people was land set away for them to continue living the way that they did, but for a lot of nomadic people that was impossible. You can't live nomadically if you're stationed in a very small area, which a lot of the reserves are. And it also meant that Indigenous people did not harass or molest, as the treaty says, any settlers that were here, and that we also had some rights to continue practicing the ways that we had practiced before. But then with documents like the Indian Act, some of those things were taken away from us as well. But yeah, I think fundamentally being a treaty person means you acknowledge the treaty signed, who signed it, and what they mean for people here.